Most people are still watching Bitcoins having cycles, arguing over ETFs, or chasing whatever meme coin is trending on Twitter. But quietly, and I mean quietly, Stellar has been building the kind of foundation that changes everything. And if you're holding XLM right now, this next chapter might be the most important update in Stellar's entire history. Because here's the truth. What Stellar is doing isn't just another blockchain update. It's not about token burns or hype announcements. This is about infrastructure, real global painted rails being laid down in front of our eyes. While most people are still treating crypto like a casino, Stellar is literally wiring up the world's financial plumbing. Let me explain. A few years ago, when Stellar first came into the spotlight, the narrative was simple: fast and cheap cross-border payments. But that barely scratches the surface of what Stellar has turned into today. In 2025, it's no longer about being an alternative, it's about integration. Governments, banks, and fintechs are starting to realize they can plug into Stellar instead of fighting against it. You've got MoneyGram, Circle, and even global remittance firms using the Stellar network to move value in real time. But the real story, the one you won't see on mainstream headlines, is how Stellar's infrastructure is becoming a bridge between traditional finance and digital assets. That's not just talk. It's already happening in places like Ukraine, Latin America, and Africa, where Stellar's technology is quietly powering digital currency pilots and cross-border settlements. Now, let's pause here for a second. Why does this matter? Because this isn't just about one coin going up. This is about who will run the next era of money movement. And Stellar's position right now, especially with the partnerships and government-level pilots it's engaged in, looks eerily similar to where Ripple was before the banks started openly testing XRP for cross-border transactions. But Stellar has something Ripple doesn't. It's structured for open collaboration, with a nonprofit foundation that focuses on inclusion over control. That's why central banks and humanitarian organizations actually trust it enough to test digital currencies on its rails. In fact, the Ukrainian government's digital currency initiative, the e-hryvnia, is being built using Stellar's technology. That alone tells you how deeply Stellar is involved in the future of programmable money. And if you're wondering why that's significant, think about this. When a national government builds its CBDC on a public blockchain like Stellar, it's not just validating the tech. It's saying, we're ready to connect to the global system. That's a big deal. Because in a world shifting toward interoperability, where money, data, and identity flow seamlessly, Stellar is already plugged into that vision. Now, here's the wild part most people haven't noticed. Stellar's anchor network, the system of fiat on and off-ramps that connect banks and digital wallets, is expanding faster than ever. Each new anchor means more liquidity, more access, and more use cases for XLM as the settlement token behind the scenes. So while traders are obsessing over daily charts, Stellar is out here forming partnerships with fintech firms, money transfer operators, and even humanitarian aid organizations, all using Stellar's blockchain to move value instantly. This isn't the sexy side of crypto. There's no fireworks, no hype, but it's the side that actually lasts. Because when the dust settles, it's the blockchains that solve real problems that survive. And Stellar's problem-solving happens on a global scale, from helping migrants send money home without being robbed by remittance fees, to giving governments a platform to test stablecoins and CBDCs, to connecting digital assets with real-world payments. It's the kind of quiet, world-changing development that happens right before a massive shift in market sentiment. But let's talk about why this update is huge. Over the past few months, Stellar has been making strategic moves, updating its smart contract capabilities through Soroban, enhancing liquidity tools, and onboarding more partners that bridge fiat systems with blockchain. This isn't just nice-to-have progress. It's the backbone of future adoption. With Soroban, developers can now build on Stellar with more flexibility, meaning DeFi, tokenized assets, and stablecoin ecosystems can thrive without sacrificing speed or simplicity. And that's a game changer, because up until now, Stellar's main use case was payments. But with this evolution, Stellar isn't just the network that moves money, it's becoming the network that programs it. Imagine cross-border payments, tokenized real estate, and even CBDCs all coexisting on the same efficient, low-fee blockchain. That's what Stellar is positioning for, quietly, strategically, and without the noise. The world is heading into a digital finance era where interoperability, compliance, and real-world integration will decide which projects survive. And guess what? Stellar checks every single one of those boxes. So, when you hear huge Stellar update, understand this. It's not just another coin update. It's the evolution of an ecosystem that's finally ready to show its full potential. And for XLM holders, this moment right here could mark the turning point before the world finally realizes what Stellar has been building all along. Because once the switch flips and those connections with governments, banks, and fintechs start scaling globally, there's no going back. This isn't hype. It's preparation. And if you're paying attention, this update might just be your biggest early signal yet. See, most people think the crypto game is about hype and token price. But the truth? The real winners are the ones quietly being integrated into the infrastructure of global finance. And Stellar is one of them. Now, when I say global web, I mean literal connections, financial bridges, that Stellar is creating with banks, payment processors, and even governments. Because at its core, Stellar isn't trying to replace traditional finance. It's connecting it. And that's exactly what makes this latest update so monumental. Let's start with something big. Stellar's expanding role in global remittances. Right now, the global remittance market is worth over $800 billion annually, and growing. Millions of people rely on it to send money home across borders every single day. But here's the problem. Those transactions are slow, expensive, and exploitative. Middlemen take massive fees, banks hold your funds hostage for days, and sometimes your family only receives a fraction of what you sent. Stellar is changing that permanently. With its anchor network, Stellar connects local payment systems directly to the blockchain. What that means is, if you're in the US and sending money to Nigeria, Mexico, or the Philippines, you don't have to touch a bank or a remittance company that charges 10%. Your money moves across the Stellar network in seconds, at a cost of less than a cent. That's not theoretical utility. That's life-changing functionality. And it's already happening. MoneyGram, one of the largest remittance companies in the world, has fully integrated Stellar into its systems. They didn't just experiment. They built on it. And now, through the Stellar blockchain, users can convert digital assets to cash, and vice versa, across more than 200 countries. Think about that. That's not a crypto dream, that's real-world, regulatory-approved adoption. But the story gets even deeper, because Stellar's global reach isn't stopping at remittances. It's stepping directly into sovereign digital currencies, also known as CBDCs. The Ukrainian e-hryvnia project is perhaps the most well-known example, but it's far from the only one. Other central banks and financial authorities are quietly evaluating Stellar's technology for their own digital currency initiatives. Why Stellar? Because it's fast, transparent, and interoperable, but also because it's public and permissionless in the right ways. That means governments can issue and track currency transparently without handing control to a single private entity. It's a perfect middle ground between privacy, efficiency, and oversight. And that balance, that technical neutrality, is what makes Stellar so attractive for real-world financial integration. So, when you hear that another government or institution is exploring digital currency frameworks, just know, behind the scenes, networks like Stellar are often the quiet technology enabling it. Now let's talk about another piece of the puzzle: Circle and USDC. You probably know that Circle's USDC, one of the most trusted stablecoins in the world, is live on Stellar. But what's really powerful is why. Circle didn't pick Stellar randomly. They chose it because Stellar provides a fast, low-cost settlement layer that doesn't break under pressure. This means that every time someone uses USDC for cross-border settlements, stable payments, or DeFi operations, they could be using Stellar's rails underneath. That's a huge deal, because it transforms Stellar into a backbone for regulated digital money movement, the kind institutions and payment companies actually use. And with the ongoing expansion of Soroban, Stellar's smart contract platform, that utility is about to explode even further. Let's break down what Soroban really means, because a lot of people still don't get it. Until recently, Stellar was mainly a payments network. Fast, efficient, yes, but limited in terms of programmability. With Soroban, Stellar can now support smart contracts, opening the door to tokenized assets, lending, and decentralized finance, but with a level of simplicity and speed that Ethereum can only dream of. Think of it as DeFi without the chaos. Low fees, lightning fast execution, real-world integration. That's what makes this update so powerful. It's like Stellar just gave itself a brain, and now developers can build intelligent financial applications directly on top of it. And here's where it gets interesting for XLM holders. Every transaction, every contract, every tokenized asset that interacts with the Stellar network still relies on XLM for fees and settlement. So as activity on the network scales, from stablecoins to CBDCs to smart contracts, the demand for XLM naturally increases. That's the silent flywheel effect Stellar has been building toward all along. But there's another dimension that's often overlooked: the humanitarian partnerships. Stellar isn't just working with banks. It's working with global aid organizations, nonprofits, and fintech startups that want to bring financial access to the billions of people still excluded from the global economy. For instance, the Stellar Development Foundation, SDF, has partnered with organizations like the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, to enable direct digital cash assistance to displaced people. Let that sink in. Refugees receiving humanitarian aid instantly on-chain. No middlemen, no corruption, no waiting weeks for access. That's what Stellar is doing right now. And here's why that's genius. When these humanitarian systems scale, when NGOs, banks, and fintechs all start operating on the same rails, Stellar becomes the invisible backbone of real-world financial inclusion. That's the difference between hype projects and infrastructure projects. Hype fades, infrastructure endures. So yes, this is a huge update, because what Stellar's doing right now, between Soroban's launch, MoneyGram's integration, global CBDC exploration, and humanitarian impact, is positioning it to become one of the most essential networks in digital finance. And yet, most of the crypto market still doesn't see it. They're too busy chasing volatility to notice the network that's literally wiring up the next generation of global payments. That's what makes this moment so powerful for long-term holders. Because when the world finally catches up, when people realize that Stellar's already doing what others only promise, that's when the revaluation happens. And if you're holding XLM before that happens, you're not early, you're positioned. What does all of this actually mean for XLM holders like you and me? Because at the end of the day, when we talk about updates and integrations, what we're really asking is, how does this affect the value of what I'm holding? And the truth is, this is where things get exciting. Let's start here. Utility equals longevity. In crypto, there are thousands of projects fighting for attention, but 95% of them won't survive because they don't solve anything real. Stellar does. Every new partnership, every new government pilot, every new Soroban application adds another layer of utility to the network, and by extension to XLM. See, XLM isn't just some speculative token floating around. It's the fuel of the Stellar ecosystem. Every transaction, from cross-border payments to CBDC transfers to DeFi interactions, uses XLM to settle fees and facilitate liquidity. That means as the network grows, so does demand for the token. So, while most traders are staring at charts trying to predict the next pump, the real long-term investors are quietly stacking and waiting because they understand what's being built. Here's the thing most people miss about blockchain adoption. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens in layers. First, you get the infrastructure built. Then you get the partners on board. Then you see volume start flowing through the system. And that's exactly where Stellar is right now, moving from the partnership phase into the volume phase. MoneyGram integration? Check. USDC on Stellar? Check. CBDC pilots? Already underway. Smart contracts with Soroban? Just launched. That's not speculation. That's the foundation of a financial network being activated piece by piece. And once that liquidity starts to flow, once people realize that Stellar is actually being used for billions in cross-border transfers, stablecoin settlements, and DeFi operations, you can bet market sentiment will change fast. Because markets eventually follow utility. Always. Now let's talk about the psychology of this moment. If you've been holding XLM for a while, you've probably experienced frustration. Maybe you've watched other coins pump out of nowhere while Stellar quietly builds in the background. You might have even wondered, Why isn't XLM moving like the others? Here's why. Stellar's not a hype project. It's an infrastructure project. It's not meant to spike on every rumor. It's meant to sustain once the real-world adoption hits. And when that happens, the growth isn't just a pump, it's a revaluation. Think about what happens when banks, fintech companies, and even governments begin using Stellar at scale. That's millions, maybe billions of daily transactions being settled using XLM. At that point, it's not just a coin, it's a financial rail. And that's where the big money starts paying attention. Not retail traders, but institutions, funds, and payment processors who want exposure to the next generation of financial infrastructure. So let's play out the scenario. As adoption increases, liquidity demand for XLM rises. As Soroban applications grow, developers need XLM to deploy and execute contracts. As remittance partners expand globally, XLM becomes the bridge asset for fast conversions between fiat and digital currencies. This is a positive feedback loop, a flywheel effect. Every piece of the ecosystem feeds the next. And as the system grows, so does the value locked within it. That's the quiet strength behind Stellar, and why this update is so important. Because while others are waiting for the next Bitcoin having to make headlines, Stellar is preparing for something far more powerful, real utility hitting critical mass. Now, here's the part where you have to decide what kind of investor you want to be. There are two types of crypto holders: the ones who chase hype and the ones who hold conviction. Hype traders buy when it's loud. Conviction holders buy when it's quiet. And right now, Stellar is quiet, but louder than it's ever been in progress. If you've been in the market long enough, you know how this story goes. The networks that actually get adopted, that actually solve something, they move slower at first. But once they move, they don't stop. So if you're holding XLM right now, this isn't the time to doubt. This is the time to pay attention. Because everything Stellar has been building, from MoneyGram and USDC to CBDC pilots and Soroban, is setting up the perfect storm for adoption. And when that storm hits, the people who stayed focused will be the ones positioned to benefit the most. We are standing right at the edge of a financial reset, a new era where money moves differently, where speed, transparency, and interoperability aren't optional, they're mandatory. And in that new world, the projects that survive aren't the ones shouting the loudest. They're the ones that built the rails quietly while everyone else was distracted. That's Stellar. When you look at everything happening, from MoneyGram's integration to USDC settlements, to Ukraine's digital currency, to Soroban's programmable finance layer, it paints a very clear picture. Stellar isn't chasing trends. It's laying down infrastructure. And that's what's so powerful about this update. Because while 90% of the crypto market is still playing musical chairs, Stellar is sitting at the table where the future of money is actually being discussed. This network is already being tested and used by banks, fintechs, governments, and aid organizations, not just for theory, but for real-world delivery. And when that kind of adoption starts to hit critical mass, the market eventually catches up. It always does. Now, let's be real for a second. Not every crypto project will make it. Not every coin will change the world. But Stellar is different because it's solving a real-world pain point that touches billions of lives. The ability to move money freely and affordably across borders. That's not a luxury. That's a human need. And that's what gives Stellar its staying power. You can build 1,000 hype tokens, but if they don't serve real people, they disappear the moment attention fades. Stellar, on the other hand, gets stronger the more it's used. And the more the world demands faster, cheaper, borderless value movement, the more Stellar becomes the go-to choice. That's what this update really signals, the point where innovation meets necessity. So what should XLM holders take from all of this? First, patience isn't weakness. In crypto, the loudest projects often burn out the fastest. The ones that move with purpose, with strategy, take longer to unfold, but when they do, it's exponential. Second, the next wave of adoption won't look like the last one. This isn't going to be driven by retail FOMO. It's going to be driven by utility, by integration, and by institutional adoption. And third, if you're holding XLM right now, you're holding a piece of that infrastructure. It might not feel exciting today, but when those switches start flipping, when the real-time settlement rails go live globally, When CBDCs start interoperating through open blockchain frameworks, Stellar won't just be part of the system. It will be the system. Let me leave you with this. Crypto has gone through waves of hype and collapse. Projects rise, they promise the world, and they fade into irrelevance. But every once in a while, there's one network that stays consistent, focused, mission-driven, transparent, and deeply rooted in real-world use. That's Stellar. While others scream to the moon, Stellar quietly connects the world. One transaction, one partnership, one breakthrough at a time. And that's why this update is so much bigger than people realize. Because this isn't the end of Stellar's journey. It's the moment everything starts accelerating. The moment all those quiet developments finally begin to converge into something massive. So here's my question to you. When that moment arrives, when Stellar's utility becomes undeniable, will you be reacting to the headlines? Or will you have already positioned yourself before the noise? Because if you're here watching this video, paying attention to the kind of move Stellar is making right now, you're already ahead of 99% of the market. This isn't the time to panic. This isn't the time to sell into boredom. This is the time to understand what's really being built. If you found value in this breakdown, hit that like button, not for the algorithm, but to remind yourself you're focused on substance over hype. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications because we're tracking every move Stellar makes. From the next MoneyGram expansion to new CBDC integrations, to how Soroban could reshape DeFi entirely. And comment below, I'm paying attention, because in a world full of noise, the ones who pay attention to the quiet builders are the ones who win. This was your deep dive into the huge Stellar update, and trust me, the next few months might change everything.